Well, I was really looking forward to the weekend. I mean, for these boys, it's such an opportunity to get to go real racing Toyota.
It's something that I've been looking forward to my whole life, basically.
Bit mixed between excited and nervous because first race weekend with Toyota Guzzi Racing, especially from a sim driver's perspective.
I'm expecting the go-kart boys to go a little bit better. Okay, it's the first time they're in a front-wheel drive touring car, but they've been in that environment, that pressure of a real race. Where the sim boys, this is going to be their first real race in real life. Their learning curve is going to be a bit higher. However, though, we've got some exceptional drivers with Mika and Nakib, and I think they'll be fine. Really interesting to see who is going to come out on top.
I was just looking through everyone's onboards. Practically every day that I had free time, I was just watching it side by side on my laptop.
Trying to learn where I could have improved, the mistakes I've made before to not make it again.
Where I would gain an advantage from my competitors, like they might brake earlier, use a different line, use different gearings.
I just tried to make sure I got enough sleep before the big weekend.
It was actually quite interesting because just the day before, like the Thursday, I had my last SPM paper, and then on Friday I straight away had to go to the track.
Alex was just briefing us about the race weekend that we were gonna go up against the super sporting class. Obviously it'll be tough, but he thought to us that we could manage it, and he just wanted us to be there and have fun and drive our best, because that's what we are all here for.
Just make sure that we don't put too much unnecessary pressure on ourselves.
We're not expecting you to come here and be Michael Schumacher on first lap, but it's very important to see that they do learn, that they do improve, and show the right attitude that reflects the values of Toyota.
The Friday practice sessions is what builds your race.
We really have to, use all of the time that we have in free practice.
We had 2 practice sessions, half an hour each. If you do well in practice sessions, 9 times out of 10 you're going to do well in the race.
It's probably one of the most important days because that is your only session to figure out where the limits of the car is.
Making sure everything is tip-top before the race, the engine, the gears, the whole chassis, if it's balanced out. You want to really test the setup during practice to find which is the right setup for you before the race.
If there's anything wrong with the car, maybe I can tell the mechanics and they could change it before qualifying.
It's not about the timing at the end of the day, it's just getting the feel of the car.
When I came into free practice, it's been like 3 months before I drove a car on the track. So for me, my main goal in free practice was to just get used to everything again.
But most importantly, it was actually to learn the track. In our previous test days, we were using the full Sepang track. But for that race weekend, we were only using the north track.
They need to make sure that they make use of every lap, every corner.
Find your ideal braking points.
Where the overtaking opportunities would be at.
Do some acclimatization laps to really understand the different line that we had to take through one of the corners. And then came second practice session, which was going into the finer detail, making sure that I could do consistent lap times, lap after lap.
Because straight after practice, a few hours later, you got to do qualifying, which sets the grid for the race.
Is a beauty and a beat.
In our races, we run the Toyota tires.
Tire pressures is a very important tool for setting up a car.
From the first minute up until the 30th minute, just in and out, doing 2-3 lap runs with different tire pressures.
It was going higher on the front and then sometimes lower, and then higher on the rear and sometimes lower on the rear.
During our official practice, we were running super different tire pressures, which seemed to work for each of us.
Okay, I want to try just going down all around so you can pick up grip. Okay, 34 all around. As soon as the tire pressure is done, you go.
With Malaysian weather, sometimes it's a bit cold, sometimes it's really hot. So when the temperatures go high, you want to go down with the pressures. Sometimes when it gets cold, you want to go back up. And it was very tricky to get right because the temperature was changing every 10-15 minutes.
Every tire has a different window in which they work best, they give the most grip.
And if you can get it within that window, the car's as good as it can be.
32, 34.
The smallest of changes, like 2 psi, can give you up to 3/10 in racing, which is a lot.
It's not a visual thing, but it's something that you can feel.
Because when you're trying to turn, you can feel it either turning more than you want to or turning, not enough considering the amount of steering angle you're putting in.
What is it?
The front was 32, the back is 30.
Okay, how does it feel?
The beginning of the
So it's stay the same or you want to change?
Alex wanted us to act like real racing drivers where sometimes we'd have to figure things on our own.
The way we coach them is we need to coach them that they learn to take care of things themselves. We can't continuously be telling them what to do. If you're happy, just keep driving.
I think
The boys are coming back and feeding back to us a lot what was happening with the car, working with the mechanics, which is all part of the game. You need to work with the mechanics and communicate to the mechanics. Because it is a team sport, people forget about that. We always focus on the drivers, but it is a team sport.
34 back, and I think front.
We give the feedback to our engineers and they figure out what pressures to use.
I think it's all about having a good relationship with the mechanic. That just makes everything a lot easier.
Saya pernah cakap lah, kerana practice pertama agak dulu kan, itu brake disc sudah pernah bengkok.
I would get the notes down from my mechanics on the tire pressures, cold and hot tire pressures, while I started off with what I came back with.
When we get out of the car, the race engineer will take all of our data.
All of us would go one by one and we would talk with him individually.
We sit together with him and talk about our session. We can compare with the other drivers and also our onboards to see what we can do to go faster.
Let's say I compare my lap to Nakib and then I compare my lap to Troy, I compare my lap to Juan.
See what I'm doing wrong, if I'm braking too early, going on the throttle too late, or like a different line would work better.
Which sections of the track we're going slower or quicker. So when I'm basically braking too early, so I'm going into the corners a bit slower and I'm also holding the brakes a bit longer.
Okay, so qualifying is about getting the fastest lap. It's you're out for half an hour and you don't have to do 10 good laps.
So that will set your grid positions for the races.
All you need is one perfect lap in qualifying, nailing every braking point, making sure you don't overdrive the car, coming into every corner with this correct amount of power.
It's about trying to keep the car cool, the tires cool, and then just building up, doing that one lap.
If the tires are too cold, there won't be enough grip on the car. And if it's too hot, there also won't be enough grip. It's quite hard to balance it out.
And the drivers who can optimize that will be looking good because obviously you want to start as high up at the front for the actual race. It's not about going out there and being fast on the very first lap,
Fresh tires, when you go out on track and you push for a qualifying lap, the window is usually 4th lap to 5th lap, so you can do your best time in that window, and then after the 5th, 6th lap, then you're just wasting your tires.
I would say qualifying was okay. Wasn't ideal. I remember my time. I was a few tenths from the rest of the guys. I did the same time as Putra.
I personally did some mistakes by opening up a bit too wide, but I qualified P2.
I had no idea what the results were until I came out of the car and saw the timing screens. I was pleasantly surprised.
Nakib Aslan shocked the entire pit by actually setting the fastest time in official practice.
I didn't put a clean enough lap. In my fastest lap also, I made just one mistake on the front straight. And then I finished 3rd behind Juan and Nakib. The gap was not even that big. I think it was 2 tenths or 3 tenths.
When I drive, I try to get everything correct. But that's a mistake that I think I did. I gathered up too much information in my head that I couldn't process anything.
As a racing driver, what you want to do is you want to drive on instinct. When everything happens subconsciously, that's when you're quickest. You're always trying to find the limit of the car. You can get really close to that limit, and if you go slightly over, then you're gone. So in qualifying, there's quite high risk as well, because if you crash your car, that means you'll definitely miss race 1, and you'll possibly miss race 2 depending on how big the crash is. And I had that moment where I just went a tiny bit over the limit. I touched the grass, and then since the grass is very, very low grip, it just spun me around. I was inches away from crashing into the wall, like, you know, quite high speed at the final corner. And at that moment, when the car spun and I saw that I was about to hit the wall, I was like, okay, this is my race weekend over. I'm not going to be able to do a race after this. Thankfully for me, even though I had that very, very close near miss moment, I didn't crash the car.
People keep asking me if they're ready for race day, and trust me, they've been ready. They've been ready for a while now. It's a really, really big opportunity for them, and it's really interesting to see who is going to come up on top.